made, we will rejoice and be glad in it. Welcome to your daily Kingdom Rewind. I pray that this broadcast, this stream, would be a blessing to you wherever you are. Don't forget to share, like, and comment. God bless you. We'll see you in the sanctuary.
In that place where I wrestled with why Naomi would send them back to an accursed place. I understand they could have gotten husbands there and get children there, but why send them back to an accursed place? And understand that as wonderful as Naomi is in the text, I believe if Naomi was here on the other side of her pain, she would make this statement to you. She would say, be careful what kind of theology you develop in the dark. Be careful what kind of theology you develop in the dark. Why? Because she says this to Naomi and to Orpah. She says, why call me Naomi when the Lord has afflicted me, or the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? She's saying that I want you to realize that right now the Lord is dealing harshly with me. The Lord is dealing unfairly with me. And brothers and sisters, the danger here is that many times it's in those dark places that if we're not careful, our perspective and view of God can become so skewed that we develop a theology where God is punishing us and he's not developing us, that God is dealing with us unfairly, when the fact is God is moving in your life. And I want you to know this, brothers and sisters, right now, that as we look around our world and see everything that's going on, not just in our city, not just in our state, but even in this country, when we talk about this pandemic, when we talk about this racial unrest, when we talk about all the things that are going on, I would suggest to you today that many people are wrestling with the fact that their theology about God has changed. That before the pandemic and before the unrest and before the doors of the church were shut to physical gatherings, everything was good. But then life began to happen, and you've seen people whose theology about God had changed. I talked to brothers and sisters, I talked to them and heard from them, and many people who were on fire last year have looked at 2020 and used that as the reason why this is not a year to give God thanks. This is not the year to give God praise. This is not the year to recognize that God knows exactly what's happening in this moment. But I would suggest to you today that don't allow the darkness of your life to reshape your theology. He's the same God yesterday, today, and forevermore. As a matter of fact, I would tell you like this, that many people today would tell you, I don't want to hear all that church language. I don't want to hear the fact that God is in control. Life just got real for me, and I need something more than all that stuff. I would say to you that if it was good then, how come it ain't good now? If God is still God, and he's still loving, he's still wonderful, he's still gracious, he's still all-powerful, then I've got to recognize that God is the God in the sunshine, and God is still God in the famine. Will you look at your neighbor? Don't touch him. We in a pandemic, but look at him and tell him, God is still God. God. That's the wrong person. Look at somebody else and tell them God is still God. God, matter of fact, look at them and tell them it don't matter who don't believe it. It don't matter who don't believe it. God is still God. Now, before we beat up Naomi for having some skewed issues in her theology, I want to lift up Naomi, because Naomi, I believe, has more in common with us than we believe. Notice here that even as she's talking to Ruth, and even as she's confessing what she's confessing to Ruth, I want you to notice that Naomi, even in her bitterness is unshaken about three things. Notice she understands that God exists. She knows that God is sovereign and that God is in control. Now you let that fly over your head. I want you to hear me that in the darkest hour of Naomi's life, she understands that God exists, that God is sovereign, and that God is in control. In other words, I may be mad at God, but I still know that God is God. Y'all didn't like that language right there, but you might as well be honest in the sanctuary that there are times when you get mad at God. You don't like what he allowed to happen. You don't agree with where your life is going. But if the truth be told, even when you were mad at God, you knew that he exists. You knew that he was sovereign, and you knew that he was in control. And the reason why you were mad is because you believed that he was in control. You could have stopped this at any time. You could have brought this to an end at any time. And that's why I've got frustration with you. But I'll never fall to that place where I forget that you are still the King of Kings and you are still the Lord of Lords. And is there anybody here that can say, I can look back on my life and know that I was frustrated with God, but I still knew that he was the head honcho. I still knew that he's the one that woke me up that morning. I'm upset with what I'm seeing in my life. I don't like what I'm seeing in the streets. I don't understand why justice is taking so long, but I know who's in control. And I've got enough sense to remind myself that when God gets ready, he can flip this at any moment. Look at somebody behind you and just tell them, I didn't forget that God was in control. I did not forget that God is in control. That's why I like Naomi, and I'm not going to let y'all beat up Naomi, because Naomi's just like me and you. Yeah, I'm upset with God, but I'm going to get down this road. Yes, I'm upset with God, but I know he's in control. I don't agree with everything going on in my life, but you best believe I know who's in control. And some of y'all should have said amen right there, because you was mad, grumbling, and upset. But you put one foot in front of the other and still came to church. You was mad and said, I ain't gonna praise, but I bet you I'll be in that sanctuary because I know who's in control. I know it's a pandemic, but I can't help it. High five your neighbors and just say, I know he's in control. I know he's in control. Have you ever had an attitude on a Sunday morning and said, I'm gonna put my arms together, I'm gonna cross my legs, I don't care how much they dance and shout, I'm not doing none of it. But you in here though. You know why? Because you wouldn't dare stay at home. You knew as much as God has done for you in your life. I've got to get up out of this bed, bring my attitude, sit up. I had to change, Reverend Nige, because I used to beat people up for coming in the sanctuary and acting like they was mad. But let me just pull back on that for a second. I'm just glad you here, and I'm glad you got sense enough to get back to the place that God told you to come through. Y'all sit down. Let me talk my way through this Sunday school lesson. Understand that she decides I've got to come back. Well, I begin to ask the Lord, something about this word return. Somebody say return. It's something about this idea of returning. There's something about this idea of returning. Lord, I'm trying to move to chapter 2 because there's some good stuff in chapter 2, but there's something about returning. Now, I wanted to deal with the fact that it's Ruth who's gleaning in the fields in chapter 2, and I wanted to draw a correlation to the welfare system and the way that we help the poor, because Ruth was able to glean after those who had more than she had, and this was not a man-made thing, but this was a part of the law that God put in place. In other words, God always had a plan plan for those who were less fortunate. I'm going to let that go till next week because I need to talk to those evangelicals who have missed on that point, that it is your responsibility to help those who are less fortunate. It is your responsibility to share in what you have with people who don't have. And that was not a man-made thing. That was Jehovah who said you can't be so rich that you don't help the less fortunate, because you wouldn't have what you have unless you existed in a system that was designed to keep poor people poor and rich people rich. And now you've got the unmitigated gall and audacity to act like you got there on your own. That was your family name. I'm gonna let that thing go, but watch what I do next week. But the Bible showed me in chapter 1 that it's return. That word return, I couldn't let it go. And the Lord said, I want you to highlight what it means to return. I want you to give them the formula for returning. And this return is not just in terms of salvation, but I want you to expand it. I want you to talk about returning to your proper alignment, to returning to your proper position, because you can be in the right place but still be in a distant country. You can be in the right place but still not be back in your mind. So there are several things that I want to show you in the text. I want to show you because I believe that this is the season for returning. The first thing I want you to notice that if you're going to return, you've got to do this. It's very simple. This is the Tim Findley language of 2020. The first thing is you've got to swallow your pride. Lord, some of y'all ain't gonna get past point 1. You've got to swallow your pride. Now understand the prodigal son, we shout about it and it's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful parable, and it says that he came to himself, and then he returned home. He came to himself first and then came home. I would suggest, brothers and sisters, that Naomi comes back home before she comes to herself. In other words, she ain't all the way quite right, but she decides, I've got to get back. She knows she's going to have to face some folk that's going to be in her business. She knows she's going to have to deal with some meddling folk that want to know where you been and why you look like that. What's happened to you? She understands she's going to have to deal with the fact that her home has been vacant for 10 years. There was no one there to plant seeds for the harvest, so her land would be worthless. Her home would be worthless. And yet she has to swallow her pride and come back. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, many people cannot return or will not return because they're so proud. They're so proud that they allow people's opinions to keep them in Moab. They allow people's opinions to keep them wandering in circles. But I need to know, is there anybody in the room that has graduated from people? Lord, y'all missed that point there. I'm going to ask you again. Is there anybody in the room that can say, Pastor Tim, I have graduated from people. I will no longer let people keep me away from my promise. You can talk about me. You can laugh at me. You can say I don't look good. You can say whatever you want to say. But I'm in such a desperate place that I've got to get back to where I came from, and I'm going to swallow my pride. I don't like it, but I'm going to swallow my pride in order to get back. As a matter of fact, look at a few folk around you and just tell them, I've had to swallow my pride a few times on this journey. There were some things that I should not have done. I know you told me I shouldn't have did it, but I did it anyway. I know you know that I made the mistake, but I'm not going to let your I told you so keep me from coming back. I'm preaching to somebody in here, but look down your road and say, I graduated from people. And when you graduate from people, you graduate from opinions. I don't need need your opinion, but even if you offer it, I'm still coming back. Even if you try to regulate me to the fringes, I'm still coming back. Naomi had to swallow her pride and say, I've got to get back. I've got an attitude, but I've got to get back. Point number 2, I'm getting out of here. Make sure you write this down, that if you're going to return, come all the way. Y'all ain't saying nothing. I said, if you're going to return, come all the way. Your place was not on the road to Bethlehem. Your place was in Bethlehem. In other words, let me put it like this. It's good that you want to come back, but when you come back submitted. When you come back ready to surrender. I made some mistakes, but I will not do halfway in and halfway out. I've been through hell, and I'm tired of 50% religion. I need all of it. Look at your neighbors. Grab them. No, don't grab them. But just look at them and put your elbow on their elbow and say, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of halfway. I got to come all the way back. Orpah made it halfway. Orpah made it 50%. And she said, enough is enough. I don't see no prospects this way. And she went back to Moab. But there was something about that Ruth. Ruth said, I'm going with you. And Naomi said, we got to go all the way back. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, the difficulty in this day is that you got people who talk about returning. You got people who talk about using their gifts. You have people who talk about getting in that place of relationship with him, but they want to hold on to the things of Moab. They want to hold on to the things of Egypt. And God sent me here to preach this word to you, that this is not the season of halfway, because halfway will not make it in this time. You got to be all the way in or all the way out. You got to be all the way in or all the way out. Look at your neighbors and say, neighbors, not 2019, not 2018, not 2017. If you was going to do 50%, you should have did it then. But I can tell you unequivocally that 2020 is about being all the way in. Either you show that you're all the way in, or you take a step back. Look at somebody and say, I'm coming all the way back. I'm coming all the way back. I'm a fanatic. I'm a radical. I am 1,000% in this thing. I don't have a parachute. I don't have a plan B. I'm either gonna die in this thing or that's it for me. I'm all the way in. Now I hear what you're saying. Pastor, how does that apply to me? Because God told me to tell you that he gave you ministry and he gave you a promise, and you've been operating halfway. You've been using half of the utterance. You've been using half of the gift. But God told me to tell you, if you're going to return to your proper alignment, it's time you come all the way in. You got to pray all the way. You got to fast all the way. You got to love all the way. Look at somebody and say, come all the way. I'm trying to get out of here. But the last point I want you to hear, and this is a big one now, I want you to write this one down. If you're going to return, you got to bring destiny with you. You got to bring destiny with you. I thought I would have heard more amen. So look at your neighbor and say, if you're going to return, you got to bring destiny with you. What I love about the text is that Naomi had the conversation with Ruth. She tried to convince her that this is not the journey for you. This is not the way you want to go. But Ruth was so adamant that I'm going to go with you, that the Bible says that she stopped trying to convince her, that she stopped trying to stop her. She said, no, I can see you ain't going nowhere. I can see that you ain't gonna forget about me. And she said, all right, then we ain't gotta talk about it no more. And the Lord sent me here to let somebody know that your season of arguing about the purpose on your life must come to an end. You are called, and that's just the way it is. You got that gift, and that's just the way it is. You are spending too much time trying to argue with something that ain't going nowhere. Look at your neighbor and say, the oil on your life ain't going nowhere. You can argue all you want to argue. You can fuss all you want to fuss, but you got to bring destiny with you. You got to bring what's on you with you. Grab somebody. Don't grab them, but look at somebody and just tell them, bring it with you. Bring it with you. When you come back with it on you. When you come back ready. When you come back, make sure that everything connected to you is in the right place. Open up your mouth and tell God, thank you. I'm trying to get out of here. I'm about to put this microphone down. I hope you got these little 3 points. I hope you got my little 3 points. I'm about to get out of your way, but I need to give you a bonus point. I was going to let this thing go, but the Lord said, no, add this in, because for at least 25 of them, they're going to get the point immediately. I need you to make sure that you get this bonus point. This ain't for everybody, but this is for you hard-headed folk. Us hard-headed folk. This is for the folk, and you'll know what I'm talking about. That if you're going to return, here it is. You got to survive your nickname. Y'all missed it. Y'all missed it. I know it don't make sense. Hear me again. Now, if you're going to return, you've got to survive your nickname. What are you talking about, Pastor Tim? The Bible says that Naomi is frustrated, that she's angry and frustrated with God, and she attempts to rename herself. She says, do not call me Naomi, but call me Mara, because the Lord has dealt bitterly with me. Now, before you look at me like that, I want you to be all the way honest. In some of your most frustrating times, you tried to change your identity. You tried to change who you were. You tried to change what was on your life. Don't y'all look at me like that. Where are the people I'm talking to? That in your darkest hours, you said, I ain't preaching no more. I ain't going to church no more. I'm sick and tired of church folk. I'm tired of everything. Don't call me sister nothing. Don't call me brother nothing. Don't call me minister nothing. Don't call me pastor nothing. I'm going back to what I know. Yeah, I'm gonna come to church, but I ain't doing ministry. I'm gonna sit in my seat and I ain't doing nothing because y'all make me sick. Look at your neighbor and say, I've been there before. I said, I've been there before, but I want you to notice, Mama, I was reading the text, and I'd never seen it before. I was reading the text, and I love what the author does, because Naomi says, change my name, call me Mara, but the author in the next verse says, so Naomi, y'all missed it. She said, call me Mara. God says, so Naomi. In other words, I know what you wanted, but I know how to outlast your nickname. Grab your neighbor by the hand and say, neighbor, I'm so glad that I survived my nickname. I was mad, but God did not hold it against me. I was upset, but God didn't hold it against me. Look at somebody and say, neighbor, I don't know about you, but I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I may be upset, but I'm coming back. I may be mad, but this is the season for you to return. And don't you let nobody make you feel bad for coming back. I died for this. I almost lost my mind for this. I needed to get back. I got to get back. Open up your mouth and tell God. I don't know who I'm talking to. I said, I don't know who I'm talking to, but God sent me here to pronounce in this house that I know it looks bad. It looks like everything's going out of control. But look at somebody and say, chapter 2 is on the way. Look at somebody else and say, chapter 3 is almost here. Look at somebody else and say, chapter 4 is right around the corner. Don't you faint. Don't you give up. Don't you walk away. Be mad, but get back. Be frustrated, but get back. Be angry, but get back. Don't stay where you are. Get back. Get back your praise. Get back your joy. Get back your peace. Get back your gift. Get back your anointing. I've got to get back. I've got to get back. Find you 3 people and say, neighbor, this is the season of you coming back. This is the season of you coming back. Get back in place. Get back in place. Get back. Get back in place. Get back in place. It was for your good. It was for your good. It was for your good. God said, I gotta make you holy. I'ma make you unhappy. But I'm trying to get you holy. I'ma make you upset. But I know what I'm doing. You're gonna be better than you've ever been. You're gonna be wiser than you've ever been. You're gonna be stronger than you ever been. Get back home. Somebody say, I'm on my way back. I'm on my way back. And there is no devil. There is no devil that can stop me from getting back. I'm on my way back. And there is no curse that can stop me. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but God, but the Lord, but God delivereth him out of them all. I'm coming back. Listen, we often beat Naomi up, but I would suggest to you that even in Naomi's frustration, she is still leading. Even in her frustration, she is still moving forward. The problem is not that you're frustrated. The problem is you stop moving forward. The problem isn't that you're upset. It's that you allowed you being upset to stop you from moving forward. The truth is, brothers and sisters, that we've not done a good enough job in the church of ministering to people and showing people that sometimes going in the right direction still causes you to grapple with difficult feelings. We've made people feel bad because as they were coming back, they didn't have a praise on their lips. It's churchy that when you come back speaking in tongues. Come back with holy hands, tears coming in your eyes, and just giving God glory and worship. And that's wonderful for those who do. But there's some that come back frustrated. They come back angry. They've lost stuff. But we don't acknowledge that, but they coming back. Some folk who will come into this house, they will come and they're not coming churchy. They come and beat up, battered, and tore down. They're going to look exactly like what they've been through. But the blessing is that the steps of a good man, the steps of a good woman are ordered by God. Brothers and sisters, this is that season. And I know that we often overutilize that word seasons in the church. Everything's about seasons. But the truth is, I absolutely believe that this is the season of return. I absolutely believe that God is saying it's time for you to return to your first love. It's time for you to return to that place where you are excited about doing the work of ministry. But it's a process. What I'm thankful about is that it becomes clear later on, as we'll talk about, that Naomi begins to recognize the hand of God, and she begins to position things, and it begins to look more and more as we read that she's getting the picture. But she had to return. And that's all I want to tell you today. I'm done. That this season that we're in, it's time for you to return. Return to ministry. Return to proper alignment. Return back to an intimate relationship with God. Leaving those things of Moab. Leaving those things that look like that former season of disobedience. There's some connections that you gotta let go. Orpah was not a part of the story. Orpah had to go. Maybe you're trying to force some Orpahs in your life to go with you, where it's time for you to let them go. Maybe you're trying to force folk to go with you because you're afraid of being alone with God. Maybe you're forsaking destiny connections because you don't understand how important discernment is. This is the season of return. And for God's sake, survive that nickname.
Well, I hope that was a blessing to you. I hope you heard something that would cause you to grow in your relationship with Christ. Please remember, we love you, we thank God for you, and we're asking that you would give in this moment as we continue to do the work of ministry. God bless.